All right, we're going to give this a shot here. If there's any problems, send me a message. Let me know what you're experiencing. But my name is Scott Wahl. I'm an admin of the Maura Murray official pages, and I'm an advocate for the family. And I'm here to do a Q&A. Our friends over at Reddit, they actually have about 10,000 members. Asked us to do a Q&A, and so we're going to go ahead and answer a bunch of questions that they have. We also got a bunch of questions in over Facebook, so we're going to do that too. I've got some stuff set up as well that I can actually show you some Google Earth images as well as some stills and that sort of thing to, I think, help explain what's going on, so that ought to work well. Let's go ahead and just get right into the questions. So first question is the car may have been in multiple places. Can you explain that? And yes, I can. So let me show you this. So over the years, there's been multiple people that have come forward, and we have all different reports of the car being in different locations. So right here where the Westman's home is, straight across, pretty much diagonally across from their window, we have the Saturn with a police vehicle behind it. This was Susan Champy. We're calling this location B, Susan Champy's witness B, and this is basically where she saw the vehicle. Obviously, from the Westmans, they've never been very clear on the different locations or specifically where they saw the vehicle, but obviously they'd have a clear shot at being able to see the vehicle in this location. The second location is there's the tree with the bow on it right here, and there's a group of 3 trees that are right past the tree with the bow, and this is where the car would have originally gone off the road. So there's 3 indications that we have that the car was there. One is that witness C saw the car as they were driving home from work, saw the vehicle in front of these trees in the ditch. The second would be is when Fred showed up on Wednesday morning, he saw the tracks in the snow in this same location. And then the last piece of evidence, which is not as concrete, would be the police report that Cecil Smith filled out, and he drew indentations in the snow in front of 3 trees. So that kind of matches up with what Witness C and what Fred Murray saw on Wednesday morning. The next location is down here, and this would be where Witness A, or Karen McNamara, saw the vehicle. She says that it was parked nose to nose, and that she did see an SUV. In the first location, or that I addressed over here, location B, Susan did not remember specifically which vehicle it was. She said if she had to lean towards choosing one, it would probably be the SUV. So these are the 3 different locations that we see the vehicle in. I noticed that on Facebook earlier this week, people were talking about sight lines and who could see what. I've been up to Marat's house, and yes, I know I spelled Marat wrong, but up here there is their sight lines are somewhat obstructed through the trees, but you could see through the trees. The Westmans obviously had the clearest view of everything going on, and over here, where the red line is this would have been from the front porch of the Atwoods property. We recently talked to Barbara. She said you could not see the accident or down near the corner where the accident was from her front porch. And also, if you do Google Street View, and as well as if you're standing in these locations, it's also hard to see the front porch. Now, that being said, if Butch had walked out towards the end of his driveway, he obviously would have been able to see down towards the corner. So anyway, those are the 3 locations. So let's go ahead and move on. Next question is so given the recent information that's rumored around the community was that she got into a car given Barbara Atwood, and the statements that Butch told Christina McDonald that she got into a vehicle, end of story. And Maggie Freeling that she got into a vehicle or was abducted. What's your personal feeling about that? And do the locals have any idea whose vehicle she got into or who may have taken her? I think over the years, we've had tons of different reports coming forward, like rumors of possible vehicles that she could have gotten into, but there's nothing definitive. We've never been able to nail that down. The other issue that I have is if we go back here and we look at the overall area, part of the problem that I have is that there's really only 3 ways in and out of this area where Maura got into an accident. So if we zoom back out a little bit here, basically you can see that people came in this way, they came in this way or went out this way, and same thing with Bradley Hill Road. So if you actually start to look at Karen McNamara, Susan Champy, Butch Atwood, the EMS, law enforcement, 2 tow truck drivers. There's a lot of traffic that's going in and out of the direction towards Woodsville. Towards Lincoln, there's a little less traffic, but we have people that did pass the accident scene, head home that day. So the issue is we have nobody that's ever said, other than Rick Forcier, that said he saw Maura running in the road about 5 miles away. And if you try to work out the timing, it's hard to place Maura in that spot at the time that he said he saw her. But there's several people that, were in and out of the area, and there would not have been many places for her to go if, being snowbanks. So I don't rule it out. I don't rule it out that she left on foot and she hiked up the road. I asked Erin what her thoughts were. She ran track at UMass, very similar, I think, in a lot of ways. And she basically said, well, the first thing she would do is try to hike up the road and see if she could get a cell signal. So I don't rule that out. But there definitely was a lot of traffic back and forth kind of in the area that if she did not jump off the road or go into the woods, that I think people would have seen her. So anyway, I think it's probably more likely that she got into a vehicle than she ran on foot, but I'm not ruling anything out. So, all right, next question. Can we hear Maura's voice or what Maura's voice sounded like? Are there any home videos that still exist? I have a few. I've been backing up content for the family to make sure that we have it. And then that way, when it gets released, we also want to watermark that because we don't want it getting used for anything other than Maura Murray stuff. We do have some videos. I've listened to them. I can only hear Maura in one video. I know that there's some out there that I don't have where you can hear her a little bit clearer. But I don't currently have those. I don't think that right now we have any plans of releasing that. And I think the other thing to keep aware of is these are the only videos and photos that we have of her. And these are also a very personal thing for the family. So I wouldn't say that we would never release those, but I don't think that we have any plans right now to release them. So I'm curious to know what was found in the trunk of the Saturn. You and me both. I have no idea, other than what's on the inventory list that law enforcement ended up taking back in June. So I don't know exactly what was in the trunk. I think you can look at the inventory list and kind of assume that there's some things, toolkits and, car-oriented stuff that was probably in the trunk. But I don't know exactly what was in the trunk and what was in the back seat. So let's see. Next question. Where did Fred drive the Saturn after law enforcement released the property? Why did he drive it? And what made him bring it back? Actually, that's not accurate. He actually never drove the car after Maura had her accident. He, I believe, either on Thursday or Friday, started the vehicle with a spare key that was hidden on the car. But because of the car was damaged, he basically left it at Lavoie's, and it stayed at Lavoie's up until the point that law enforcement came back in June and then took all the evidence back. So he originally had, I was told, left it at Lavoie's. And at some point, Lavoie had contacted him about the storage fees and basically said, if you give me the vehicle, you don't have to pay the storage fees. And I think that he was basically planning on doing that before law enforcement came and took the car back. So it's been 2 months and 9 days since the release of part 1 of the podcast you did with Aaron, The Black Box. Can we expect part 2 to drop before the end of the year? I think the estimated release date of that is 2030 right now. So, but public pressure works in this case. So I would reach out to Erin and see what she has to say about that. All right. Can we see all of the dorm photos, like her bed and the boxes? After basically after they released the photos, I thought the first thing, because we always hear about this rumor that supposedly there was a letter that Maura had left, and that was like one of the first pictures I looked for was where are the boxes on the beds and why don't we have photos? I don't know if there are any more photos than the ones that law enforcement have given us, but that's something that we can definitely follow up on and see what happened. So, all right, let's see here. Could we get the date of who the photographer was? And to be honest with you, file a 91A and request that from law enforcement in New Hampshire, because to date, as far as I know, we have the ones that they gave Art for when they did the Crime Con. But I don't know if there's any more than the ones that they have given Art. Maura is seen with a monkey in many pictures. Was there 1 or 2 monkeys? There are actually 2 monkeys. I have pictures of both, which I'm sure many of you have as well. So this is the gray one, and this is the brown one that she had. The gray one, I know that John Smith has one. He has the gray one. He told me that it was sent to him in 2006 by the family. The brown one, nobody knows where that one is. I've talked to Julie, and she doesn't know. I've talked to Kathleen today. She also did not know where it is. So I don't know for sure if it was in the car or not in the car, because it doesn't show up in any inventory list, or if it was in the car and she took it with her when she left. So I do find it interesting if she did take it with her and she wasn't planning on coming back. I'm not sure why she wouldn't have taken her bag with her clothes and the other things that she had packed for the trip. But anyway, so those are the 2 monkeys. And yes, we don't know whatever happened to the brown one. Can we get an estimate of how many relatives and friends the Maura's have in Grafton County in Vermont prior to Maura's disappearance, and how close to the accident scene do they live? I thought Julie actually had kind of a funny response to this, but she basically said that her family has spent 2 weeks every year there for pretty much her entire life up in New Hampshire, and they have never met up with any family up there. So as far as she knows, they have no family. And I also did follow up with the friends question. Again, same thing. She doesn't know of any friends that they had up in the area when Maura went missing. So I had a hard time kind of understanding this question. So please follow up with me to clarify. But the pole and switch numbers are seen in Fred's cell phone record, but not Maura's or Bill's. Are they available, and where can they be located, or can they be located and reviewed? I know that we have, obviously, everybody knows that we have Bill and Maura's cell phone records, but I don't think that we have Fred's. And I think at the time, that's just not something he was thinking about. So I don't have my phone records from 15 years ago either. So if I'm not sure that answers your question, but if it doesn't, reach out to me. So McDonald's notes in the interview of Butch Atwood, is there an official original copy from a trusted source beside the one that's floating around on the internet that can be reviewed? That's a good question. I believe that Erin does have McDonald's notes. I'm unclear on whether or not right now they're on her blog, her website. But if they are public record, I have been going through and taking all of the public records and uploading them to the official page. So obviously, if I come across those, I don't think that there's anything private about those. We would put them on the Facebook page and release them. So when was the last time Maura was in New Hampshire and Vermont prior to her disappearance? What town did she go to, and how did she get there? Did she use the Saturn? There's been some speculation. She had, during New Year's of 2001 to 2002 and 2002 to 2003, were with her girlfriends in Goshen, New York, at a cabin. But the Christmas and New Year's of 2003 to 2004 being, 5 weeks or whatever before Maura went missing, there is no, I reached out to Bill because I had heard that she was with him. He says that she was 100% with him during Christmas, but he can't recall if they were still together during New Year's. In addition to that, the only other time when I talked to Julie that she can remember is in July of 2003, Maura was in North Conway with Fred and Bill, and possibly Freddie, but not 100% on whether or not he was there. She was not using the Saturn at the time. They were using Fred's car. So the Atwood phone issue confuses me. Can you walk us through chronologically the emergency call to and from the Atwoods on the night of Maura's accident? Well, there is a call. There is a call that's noted in the call logs at 7:42 p.m. I personally am still unclear on whether or not that is the first phone call or the second phone call that was made. I know there's a lot of talk about the 7:38 phone call that at some point Helena referenced this. Unfortunately, I've never been able to track down where that came from or if that was just an estimated time. But this is actually something that we're actively working on right now. Part of this is because we also just talked to Barbara Atwood. So we're in the process of trying to nail down the two phone calls, the times that they were made, and what happened. So I think that I'm hoping that if we follow up on that in a few months, we'll have all the answers to that. So we'll have to see how that goes. So why do you think UMass has released nothing and been so silent? And also, why do you think so much of the information has been withheld in this case or redacted? I actually think it's the law enforcement culture in New Hampshire. What you'll find is that there's just a lot, in some states, they're very easy to release information. And actually, Erin is completely the expert on this because she is the 91A FOIA request person. She has explained to me multiple times how some states are really easy to look with or work with and others are not. Unfortunately, New Hampshire is just, they're tough. They don't want to release anything, and that's always been their culture. That's how they've been from the beginning. It's why in the first 2 years, Fred got frustrated and sued the state because they weren't releasing anything that should be released. I think a good point to that is like the dorm room photos. Like when they released the dorm room photos, how did that make any impact whatsoever on the investigation. I can't see how that would have impacted the investigation, and that couldn't have been information that was leased in the beginning. But I don't really have a rhyme or reason why they choose to release some things and not others. But I do feel like they keep things very close to the vest, and that they should probably release more. So, and also the UMass. I'm not sure. I thought about that. I'm not sure that they are like going out of their way to be silent, but they were just a facet of the investigation, and the main investigation is being handled by New Hampshire. So I know that that New Hampshire law enforcement had people in UMass, law enforcement in UMass, do things, but I think that all that information just went to New Hampshire, and then they're keeping it, like I said, close to the vest. So. Do you feel like the public could help more if they knew more? Absolutely. So I don't know a lot about the Bear Brook murders, but I know that they recently identified the victims that were found in the barrels, and the person that found them was somebody online. And I think that, I mean, a perfect example of this is between two Facebook pages and the Reddit page, there's 40,000 people. So people have a lot of time, and the law enforcement cold case unit, in my opinion, they're small. And so if there are things that do not hurt the investigation, but the general public can look at and scrutinize and uncover, that can assist the investigation and not cause a problem, I'm all for that. So yes, I absolutely feel like the public could help more if they knew more. So. On the disappeared program about Maura's disappearance, it was stated that during the search for her family, approximately February 10th, until early March, the family went around and put up missing person flyers. I presume gas stations were places where flyers went up. In order to get gas without talking to a gas station employee, you would have to have some sort of debit or credit card that would leave an electronic trail. There's no way that she could have made it 140 miles and have a gas tank of only 3/4 of the way full. So my question is, how many gas station attendants approached the family with a tip that they spoke to or saw Maura on February 9th, 2004? No one. There's not ever been a gas station attendant that's come forward to the family that believes that they saw Maura, that's contacted the family anyway. Second is, did police ever figure out what gas station she stopped at to get gas? As far as I know, no, they didn't. And then it seems to me like a lot of people assume police have figured this out. Do they know, or do they just, or have they just not released more information? Every indication that I get is they don't know who did it. So when I talk to the Murray family and I've talked to Chuck, I think they want to know just as much as we do, but I don't think that I get the impression they don't know. So, and to touch back really quick on the gas stations, her car, the investigators that looked at her car in 2010, her fuel tank was full, not 3/4 of the way full. And if we go to Woodsville, I know that there are more gas stations within this radius than I have in here. But if we come down here to Maura's accident, I believe in the report, I'll clarify, but I believe it's 12 to 13 miles is the maximum distance that the investigator said she could have traveled and had that much gas left in her tank. So obviously the Swiftwater stage stop is only 1 mile away. Everybody knows about that one. And then Cumberland Farms is 6.27 miles away, roughly. And if you go all the way out to 91 at the P&H truck stop, that's about 10.65 miles away. So she would have, all of these, like everything pretty much from you, when you get off of 91, like heading down to the accident site, all of these are possibilities of places that she could have stopped. I did early on, about 10 years ago, on my first trip up to Woodsville. I did stop in and I did talk to Winnie at the Swiftwater stage stop, and her report is that she did not see Maura come in that night. I think the other thing that's interesting about this post is that you talk about the difference between a credit card and cash. When I was talking to Julie believes that she only had about $16 left in her account, and she had about $280 that she had taken out from the ATM. And so they don't think that she had another credit card or a way to pay. But law enforcement has never come forward and said, yes, we saw her at this gas station and we know that she went there. So maybe they have that information and just haven't told us. The other part of it, which is important, is obviously if she had to pay with cash, she would go into a gas station and have to pay. And just like the person said, and unfortunately, nobody has ever come forward. But that doesn't surprise me too much. I mean, think about how many thousands of people come through a gas station and pay. And to just remember one person specifically, I could see how that could be hard to do. So. If Maura, here, let me flip this back. If Maura stopped at P&H, would she have had cell phone service then? In the disappeared, Fred tells Maura that she had to make it out of the accident, had to make out the accident forms, probably in triplicate. So get these forms from the police station or wherever you have to get them from, and call me tonight at 8:00. She got the forms, but if she didn't have cell service, she may have decided to go east on 112 where she knew she'd have service. She did exit the highway at around 7:15, so she might have hoped to have service around then. Has Fred considered this? What did Fred think when Maura didn't call him at 8? And wasn't he worried considering how upset she would have been? Actually, the timing of the question is a little bit off on that. He actually had asked Maura to call him on Sunday night, and she did do that. He did mention to her about calling him on Monday, but basically kind of said, if you're not busy, like if you haven't gotten in busy with something, go ahead and give me a call. So he wasn't sitting around. What I've been told by Julie when she just talked to her dad today, he wasn't really sitting around waiting for Maura to call on Monday evening. It was more left open-ended, like if you get the chance or if you're not busy, go ahead and give me a call. So it did not raise any alarm bells when she didn't call at 8. So I wanted to ask the question because the ATM video was released. I thought that if police knew where Maura was going to get gas, they may also release any possible video from the gas station she went to. I wonder if there's a video. Maybe it shows her stumbling a little bit from the drinking. Well, Monahan and his transcripts from the Oxygen channel say that he went and took video footage from different gas stations. I think part of the confusion there is that he didn't say that they were reviewed. We get the impression that yes, they were reviewed, but they weren't reviewed by Monahan. Again, law enforcement has never said that they have seen Maura in any of those videos. So they haven't said either way. If she is in those videos, they haven't told the family. So have the Murrays determined whether she stopped for gas in Hadley, Massachusetts before getting on the highway? And if not, why? They have not determined whether or not she stopped for gas. I think that goes back to the same problem of why we don't even know where she stopped for gas, but we know that she stopped for gas somewhere close to where she had her accident. If law enforcement knows that information, they haven't come forward with it. So what evidence is there that Maura was murdered other than the fact that searchers haven't found her body or her personal items? I would say there is no proof right now that she was murdered. But I think when you look at everything and you talk to the family, it seems, I mean, we talk to her friends, you talk to her family, you talk to her dad. this is very uncharacteristic of her. So for her to have willingly done this kind of goes against what everybody that knew her the closest think. And I think that pretty much everybody that is very close to her feels that something bad happened to her. So, hopefully we do find the items or her sometime soon. So I read that there were 2-liter bottles of soda found in a bag on the front passenger seat, as well as plastic Shaw's bag. Is it known if she had a Shaw's reward card, and if so, did they check in it in order to verify where her last purchases were made, and if Maura was in the store video? I didn't think that the bag that was in the inventory report was from Shaw's. I thought it was from something else. Follow up with me later, and I'll check on that. But no, I don't think that. We don't know if she went to Shaw's. I don't think there's any evidence right now that she was at Shaw's. But I'm not sure. I'd have to go look at the report to be sure. As far as I know, too, in the inventory report, there was only one 2-liter bottle, and that was eventually taken back in June. So, New Hampshire State Police Trooper Monahan stated that they didn't see Maura in any of the retrieved surveillance footage. Is it possible they saw someone else and identified a person of interest in the video? I don't remember Monahan saying that in his transcript, that they didn't see her in any of the surveillance video. I just remember him saying that he collected it and then it was turned over to law enforcement. So I'll have to follow up on that and see if they did actually come forward and say that she wasn't in any of the videos, but I don't believe that they've said that. Maura had left calling cards behind in the car. Is it known if they were checked for any numbers she may have called in the days leading up to her disappearance? It is not known. If law enforcement did chase down and had the ability to chase down what was on these calling cards or who she called on these calling cards, it has not been released to the public. So the next question is actually, I like it. It's simple. Who called Lavoie? So this is a great question. When Aaron and I were up in Woodsville last time, one of the things we went and did is we met with, we had some questions and we met with Tom Andros. Tom Andros is the communication director for all of kind of the New Hampshire area. So he deals with the infrastructure of how 911 calls are recorded and how the transcripts are done and everything else. I think what people don't realize is that the call log is what the dispatcher is jotting down from their radio and telephone communications. There is also audio recordings of communications that night. So I believe that the way that Lavoie was contacted is he was contacted through dispatch, but that is not, dispatch did not note that in their call logs. So I do find it interesting because you would think some things, why are some things noted and other things aren't? And we did have that question for Tom, and he didn't really have a good answer on that. I think that basically dispatch is just trying to note what they feel is relevant at the time. So, but the way Lavoie knew is that Cecil contacted dispatch and dispatch called Lavoie to respond to the accident. So I'd like to ask, have we ever heard about Dick McKean being called out that evening and then the call being canceled? I know Dick had referred to his notes for clarification. Scott spoke with him recently. I think that this was important and worth asking. So Dick was, that we know of, was not called by dispatch that night. He was listening to the scanner, and he heard the call come in over the scanner, and then he ended up responding to the accident. So, and according to Dick, he stayed on scene with Lavoie. They actually argued because he felt it was his turn, his call. So they argued actually when he got on scene, and then actually Dick McKean actually stayed on scene. And I think he said he was the last person to actually leave the scene. So. I do have a question I'd like to bring up regarding what was found in the Saturn. I know we've seen the list of items retrieved from Kathleen by New Hampshire State Police. Has anyone ever seen the items law enforcement inventoried from Maura's car? I'm wondering if not everything was available when New Hampshire State Police made their confiscation. For example, Sharon Roush wrote that two gifts that had been given to Maura that were possibly in the car, the gloves and the AAA card. If the card was in the car, I think it tells us that Maura was trying to call the wrecker. So this is kind of a multi-part thing here. When law enforcement took the car back in July, right? June, July. Sorry, I think it's June. So when they took the car back in June, they gave the family an inventory report at that point. But when they originally went through the vehicle, there was the family does not know if they had made an inventory, and they currently don't have one. So if there was one that was made and given to the family, which we don't think happened, they don't have it. So we don't know. And that's, unfortunately, this has been a really big deal lately, is that we've been going through and kind of like taking the process of like trying to do chain of custody with the car. And unfortunately, because it was taken initially and looked at, then given to the family, then the car sat in a lot for a few months and then was taken back in June. Like, there's not a really good chain of custody on the car or the items. So, unfortunately. So, is there any chance Bill Rouse would sit down for an interview or at least answer any questions about his thoughts on what happened? I think at some point Bill might do that. But I think obviously his primary focus is the legal issues that he has right now that he's focused on. So, but he has been helpful. I have asked him questions concerning the Q&A that you guys have asked, and he's been very helpful at answering what he can. So, what does Maura's family think about Bill's sexual assault charges and accusations against Bill Roush? Do they support him? Do they think he's innocent? My conversations with them is they don't really get into that. They don't really feel like he was involved in Maura's disappearance. Well, let me restate. They don't feel like he was involved in Maura's disappearance. And they just kind of feel like what he has to go through right now is what he has to go through. So we haven't really discussed it that much because it's not really relevant to finding Maura as far as what Bill's going through right now. So, did Fred notice any injuries to Maura after the first accident? And this is as it relates to the ATM video. So a number of people in the ATM video have talked about the possibility that maybe she has a bruised eye and fat lip. And the problem is that the resolution of that video is so poor. And I do have a bit of a background in technology and worked with quite a few security systems. And the security system and the images that you see from that time frame are pretty indicative of what you saw during that time frame. So I think it's very hard to make an analysis very detailed based on the quality of the images at the time. There's a lot of reflections. The images are black and white. They're low resolution. So I have a feeling that they're like 200 or 300 lines of resolution tops. And generally when security cameras go into systems like that, especially if you have outdoor like where you've got a camera in an ATM or in that vestibule, because they're not directly exposed to the weather, but are somewhat exposed to the weather, they're going to get more abuse and they're not going to look as clean. So in any case, that being said, when Fred saw Maura after her accident that she had on Sunday morning, he did not indicate that she had a black eye or bruised lip or anything like that. The only thing, he may have not noticed the possibility that she could have been concussed from the airbag going off. But that could also potentially be harder to spot. So, but as far as like physical things that you would see, the answer is no. So, is there a list of who attended the Burlington party 3 weeks prior to missing Brianna Maitland going missing? Can you see if there's any attendees that connect with Maura? I actually did not know that there was a party. I don't know anything about a party that happened 3 weeks before Brianna went missing. I actually do know the FBI agent that worked on the case that looked to see if Maura and Brianna's case were connected. Their investigation was fairly fast. And I don't know all of specifically what they looked at, but his comment was that they could not find anything to connect Maura and Brianna. Whether or not it does not specifically address that party, but it is a statement that he made that may or may not be relevant to this question. So. Can you confirm more detail concerning the driving directions found in Maura's car? I can't, other than the fact that there were driving directions to Burlington, Vermont. So that's as much information, unfortunately, as I can give you right now. So hopefully in the future we learn more and we can give you more. I know that there's a couple questions down here. Helena talks about that, but anyway, so let's go ahead and just skip to the next question. Please ask the family when Maura got her driver's license. How old was she? And if they don't know, a rough estimate would suffice. I like the fact that you are a bridge to the family. So to answer the question, I did ask Julie. She did not know when Maura got her license, but just to kind of assume that she got it when most teenagers get it. So, but she did not have like a specific age when Maura got her license. So we know Maura made searches and calls that seem to be related to her trip north. Her father has said he feels certain she was going towards New Hampshire. Was it Bartlett or Lincoln? Fred thought that it was Bartlett. Obviously, if you stay on Route 112, you would pass through Lincoln. We also know that at one point in time, law enforcement, a search area that they had was North Conway. And if you had followed 112 through Lincoln over to North Conway, you would kind of cut north through North Conway to get up towards Bartlett if she went that direction. So there is another direction she could have gone when she had gotten over towards Lincoln, where she could have just gone north, but maybe it's not quite as direct. So, but yeah. So anyway, that answers that. Helena saw the index card along with someone else just before New Hampshire State Police retrieved the items back from Kathleen. Helena was interested in an exit 10 or route 10, as neither she nor her friend could recall the handwritten directions specifically other than 10. There's been speculation Maura got off on either intentionally or non-intentionally and drove 10 north. I believe this is into Woodsville. I may have spelled that wrong. Did Helena ever discuss that with you? She did not. So I just know that there were directions to Burlington, Vermont, but that's as much as I know. So I'd like to see how Scott sees his role in the community and how he learned about Maura. So I learned about Maura just like most people learned about Maura. It was through media that the family has done over the years. I saw the Disappeared episode, and I couldn't imagine being a father and having a daughter going missing, and I couldn't imagine being a boyfriend and having a girlfriend go missing. And it just struck me like it does with a lot of people. So the first thing I did is I got on the internet and I looked to see if there was any new information. And I went down the same exact rabbit hole as everybody else does, where there was a lot more information, but unfortunately not more answers. So that's how I initially got involved. I just started talking to Helena, and because I had a technical background, I was able to help her with things, and that kind of evolved into what I'm doing now. So as far as how I see my role currently in the community, I think I made a decision 6 months ago to take a different approach, like right before the 15-year anniversary, to just be a little bit more active to see if I could help in a different way. And so that's what I've been doing. I kind of consider my role as a little bit of a diplomat between the warring factions. So there's a lot of different camps and a lot of different people have segregated themselves. And so I've tried to make a big push that when information is learned in these groups, that it does get funneled back to the family. And that's really my goal, is that it gets funneled back to the family. So let's see. Well, let me check one thing really quick, guys. Hang tight with me. All right. I'd like to see anything saved from the Maura Murray missing forums. There are people on this forum who have personal archives of some or all of that forum. However, they want to make sure that the family does not oppose the archives from being released. Would you be willing to ask Julie Kurt to post a Facebook wanting the public to come forward with these archives, and perhaps a way that people could submit them for publication? Then you could link the archives to the Facebook page. I know that originally Helena took the forums down because people were really mean and harsh, and that's one of the reasons why she took it away. Helena actually did a pretty good job of evolving with technology. I mean, when Maura went missing, I think Facebook was just in its infancy. And, years later, now we have 30,000 followers between the two official pages. So I think that I get no indication that we would not be okay with that being released. I know that there's some stuff in there where people have made some outrageous accusations, but there's also been a huge number of people post these forums that have made worse accusations. So I don't think the family's worried. The family is bothered by ridiculous accusations, but that is not going to stand in their way of if we can take information that's in those forums to find answers from doing that. So yes, if you do have archived information from those forums, we don't have a problem with those forums being released again. So easily the cringiest thing is the rag stuffed in the tailpipe. Fred told Maura to do it, but could you find out what made Fred think of it? Does he do it himself before or did he hear it from somewhere else? What he said was that he had never done it before and nobody had told him to do it. It was just a concept or an idea he had, and he thought it just might be possible that if the car was smoking a lot, to not draw attention, that Maura could stuff a rag in the tailpipe and that might get her by. That's really the extent to the rag in the tailpipe coming from Fred. So, Scott, what do you think can be done to help move this case forward? Another ground search, flyers posted at local businesses. Yes, I realize these things have been done, but what do you think can help? I think all of that can help. I've had a lot of conversations with Julie in the last 6 months where she kind of refers to the Maura Murray community as wanting to build a machine, and she wants that machine to then grow. And so that's what we've been doing. So everybody has a role to play. And Fred has actually told me, this is your role. And I've seen him say, John Smith, this is your role. And Aaron, this is your role. So, it's actually, the whole point is grow this bigger. I think that we're trying to do more coordination moving forward. So for example, a local up there, Tony, he can be a little harsh at times. I love Tony on Facebook, but his heart is 100% in the right place. And he kind of came out of the woodworks. He's only about lives a half mile away from where Maura went missing. He's been an instrumental help in just keeping things alive and doing things that we ask. And he's trying to do just a local event where he's setting up at Walmart. We actually don't want the Maura Murray community there because we actually don't want to take away from just a few people that are locals also talking to locals. So we don't want to scare those people away. So, but in any case, that can be tied in with all these other things that we're doing. So, when you do boots on the ground, you have a search, you have people handing out flyers, you have somebody at Walmart, you have, the family up there to support all of these people. You have, me and Aaron and other people following up on leads. And, you have us reaching out to media to cover events like that. So I think in the future, we're going to try to coordinate a little bit better, and we're just going to try to, organize and make things bigger and continue to grow the Maura Murray community. I mean, a perfect example is that the group page prior to the Oxygen channel, I think had about 2,400 people on it. And I think that the other official page had under 1,000 people or something like that. Since the Oxygen channel, we've swelled from, roughly 3,000 people on those two pages to 30,000. And actually, we did look, it is about 30,000 independently. So there's a lot of people that follow one page and not the other. So I've heard a rumor that Maura's car was in such bad condition that it had to be towed to Amherst at the start of the semester. Is this true? So it's a little bit of a detailed answer, but that's kind of half true. So in January, Maura went to visit Fred in Connecticut. He was working a travel job at the time, so he didn't have a permanent place there, I believe. And so when Maura went to visit him, the car started having a lot of problems on that trip. And so what Fred did is Fred drove he didn't have a place to store the car in Connecticut. So he drove the car back to UMass, and Maura followed him back in that in his car. And then they basically left the car at UMass, and he basically told her not to drive it anymore. Maura was also getting rides from her friends for her clinicals. And when Fred came up and they went car shopping, they also didn't drive the Saturn. They took Fred's car. So at the point after that trip, the car was pretty much dead, and he told her don't drive it. So anyway, all right. Why did Fred and Maura go car shopping the weekend before she disappeared and not before the semester started? I asked Julie. Nobody knows. I think people's schedules, that's just the way that it worked out. So I don't have a more detailed answer for you on that. Sorry. Since Trixie posted this thread, what members of Maura's family have you consulted about the questions on this thread? With the direct family, I've consulted with Julie. Julie has been going to Fred, so I guess you could say Fred. I've consulted with Kathleen. I reached out to Curtis only today, but I didn't catch him. And then lots of people outside it. And also Bill. So Bill's not family, obviously, but you guys have a lot of Bill questions. So I've been asking Bill questions, and he's been responsive. So is it true that there is some criminal charge against Maura before she disappeared? I read somewhere, and if I remember correctly, it was theft related, and that's why that she left West Point. This is one of those rumors that has spun completely out of control. So I've talked to Julie about this, and it's really not complicated. I'm going to show you guys a couple things. So Maura got in trouble for taking some makeup, and she ended up having to go not in front of, she wasn't like arrested by a police officer or law enforcement. This was handled by West Point. And West Point, it's a student-based kind of judicial system. So students make the determination on what the punishment was going to be. So basically, what Maura had to do for her, she went through the whole process, and then she had to do something called walk hours. And what it is you get fully dressed up. So you get dressed up in your uniform, and you go out, and you have to walk in the central, I think she said it was the central area. Yeah. On your weekends. So this is basically like what Maura had to do. Now, to give you a concept, this is a picture of just a few people doing this. Julie said everybody gets in trouble for something. And so what you'll see is this is a representation of people having to go out. Let me skip through this. There we go. This is what they would do. So this is what Maura's punishment was for taking some makeup. So Julie's not 100% on how many hours she had to do, but that was her time off, or this is how she had to deal with this. Now, the other thing is that, you know, there's a lot of people in this video walking back and forth. I said, what are some examples of things that all these people out there did, you know? And she said, it could be for not having your bed made, being late to class. They used to have to memorize the headlines of today, like in the newspaper, and then recite those. And if they didn't get that right, they'd have to go do this. They have to walk hours. So she said basically everybody at one point or another gets in trouble. So at the 2-mark time frame that when things came up, Maura had an option, and the option was she could either stay for 2 more years, and if she stayed for 2 more years, then she's obligated to go into the service, or she had the option of transferring schools. And Julie just said she didn't think that Maura liked West Point. She didn't like the BS that they had to do, and thought she'd be happier at UMass, and that's why she went to UMass. It was not because she was going to get kicked out. So it's really not that complicated. So, all right. Scott, I feel like every time someone brings up Billy, I'm telling them that they're not doing anything to move the case forward. He has an alibi, didn't know where Maura was, and had no real means or motive to kill her. What do you say to people who refuse to move on from facts that are relevant and not actually help in the case, but help their own narrative, or live in a fantasy world while everybody else is working on facts? I believe that's what I wrote down. So what do I do to prevent people from spreading these rumors? Nothing. People are going to come up with crazy crap, and they're going to spin their tail, and they're going to go full force into that's what they believe. And people will convince themselves with a few facts that there's certain theories that they believe happened. For me, like, I think that the family has been really amazing. Like they look at everything. I mean, when this theory came up, okay, well, let's go look at Bill. So, you know, we know that Bill was in Fort Sill, I believe, at the time. let's see, I made some notes here. I want to make sure I get them off for you. Some of the speculation has been, when he originally arrived, he went to like other areas, like outside of kind of the general area of Woodsville. And the speculation is, could he have been going somewhere from Maura? And Fred remembers, no, that like he would tell Bill and his father, you guys go check this out in Vermont, or you guys go here, or you guys go there. So they did a fair bit of traveling, trying to follow up on leads in the days following her going missing. It seemed as if he was always with either his father, Fred, or Rob McDonald. So, there's just no indication that we have that there's this crazy window of time that he was able to break away and go find her and knew where she was, and then pretend in front of all these people that he didn't know. And then somehow some friend at UMass drove her to this cabin, and it just, we literally cannot find any information to support any of this claim. Julie also made a one very interesting point. We'll move on from this. She said that she has a close friend from West Point that is friends with Bill and her, and that this person was deployed to Iraq with Bill. And so this woman spent, a year in close quarters in a stressful environment with Bill, and Julie is still very good friends with her today, and she has never come back and said, I spent a year with him in Iraq and something is suspicious about this. So, and not to say that proves anything, but like all the information that we find kind of works against that theory. We really just cannot find anything to support it. So, but all of us will keep an open mind, and who knows, one day somebody might come up with something. So, but as of right now, there's just nothing. So, all right. The next one. I am a James Renner girl. I think he is a genius. So, Mr. Scott, I want a true critique of JR, both the good and the bad. And I really want JR to ask you some questions. I can see him having a million of them. And then she says, at James Renner, did I do that right? So I'm assuming that James Renner maybe asked this person to ask that question. If you get involved in Maura's case and you start to research it a fair bit, you start to realize that James Renner did not fit. He did not. He talked to Kurt briefly, and he's turned a lot of people off. He's made a lot of very outrageous claims that are unsubstantiated, and he continues to do that. That being said, I am not going out of my way to slander or talk about Renner. But at the same time, I think with this new approach that we're taking is that, a lot of these claims, or a lot of claims that have been made that are outrageous, ultimately spin into these entire other theories that then you have communities of people asking about and believing that this is the case. I feel like that detracts from really focusing on possibilities that maybe should be looked at more. So I think in the future, when we see misinformation come out, or we know that things aren't correct, we're going to be taking a more active role. We have 30,000 people on Facebook with one click. We're going to start to set the record straight a little bit more when we know things are being said that aren't completely accurate. So the next question is, and I know that some of these have already been answered, is, hi, Scott, who is Jules Casey Lane? That is Renner. That is a name that he uses to contact people. So Bill Roush wrote a Twitter post stating that James Renner was trying to contact an old West Point buddy named Jules and Casey Lane. Any connections? Thank you. There's a little bit of confusion on that. I talked to Bill. He sent me the screenshot of the Twitter post. It's Renner using the name of Jules Casey Lane, reaching out to somebody that Bill had gone to school with. And apparently he's done this a lot. Bill told me that he has harassed many, many, many people that have gone to school with him. So, so anyway, that's that. Did Bill Rausch and his family decline to be on the Oxygen series? They actually did. They didn't want to be part of the series, but what a lot of people don't realize is that Bill actually behind the scene worked with the producers and provided a lot of information that they used in the show. So a lot of like the photographs and the video, I believe that there's actually a video in there that was shot over that Christmas before she went missing. That's in that show, and I think it's been used in other pieces. But that was provided by Bill's family. So behind the scenes, he helped with the Oxygen series. So to me, it was kind of disingenuous when, the whole staged phone call to Bill and how he's avoiding them and didn't answer. He didn't even know that they were calling, and he had been talking to producers the entire time they had been doing the show. So it's one more of those things the Oxygen series also are trying to be entertainment as well as doing some documentation. So it's an entertainment television show. So, that's what happened. So, why do we only have 2 transcripts from the Oxygen series? There's a lot of confusion on this. Erin was able to FOIA request she FOIA requested all the transcripts. Law enforcement came back and said that they only had copies of 2 of the transcripts, which was Monahan and Cecil. But they also knew that those were the transcripts she probably was going to have access to anyway. So it's actually really confusing. And what's even kind of weirder about all of that is that the Texas Crew Productions got a lawyer involved to try to prevent the family and prevent law enforcement from giving all of the transcripts over because they said it was their property. I don't understand the motivation. And if anybody from the production company or anybody else would like to set the record straight with me, I would love to understand why the additional transcripts have not just been given to the family, because it's the family and it's their missing loved one. So, but yeah, I think it was an important question and it should be addressed. So, all right. Where in Weymouth did Maura get her car inspection stickers? Julie probably got them at the same place. If you don't know the street or name, what part of Weymouth is fine. Julie said that she actually did not get a car inspection in the same place as Maura. She didn't get a vehicle till she actually got out of West Point. And then she said that the car sticker indicated it was Washington Street and Weymouth Landing. So when did Fred decide to go to Amherst to see Maura a few days before she disappeared, and what caused him to decide to go? Was it his idea or hers? Well, I don't know when the decision was made for him to go, but obviously just a month before she had been having car problems and he drove the car back. So they were making plans to go get a new car. So obviously that was part of, I would think the deciding factor on why he was going there. So, why did Fred bring $4,000? It turned out to not be enough for a car. Did Fred have any reason to think it would not be enough for a car? What was the money originally for? So again, this is one of those things that have rumors that have gotten spun out of control, that there's really nothing spectacular about this. Fred was working at the time. And so by the time he got off and then was traveling up there, banks were closed. So he stopped at several ATMs to take out money. You can only take out so much money at a time, depending on the ATM and the bank. So he stopped at several banks and ended up taking out $4,000. Fred said he wanted to have cash because he felt that when he bargained for a car, that he would have a better ability to negotiate and deal with the car dealers that way. Apparently, they found 3 different cars as possibilities. One was $4,000, one was $6,000, and one was $8,000. They had basically decided on the one that was $6,000, but because Fred had only brought up $4,000 at that time, that's one of the reasons why they didn't buy the car at the time. And then also, this $4,000 has spun into all kinds of other things. So, for example, it's been said that like, well, she needed the money to like run away. Well, Fred took the money back with him. He did not give the money to Maura. So Maura did not leave with $4,000 plus what she took out of her bank account. She left with $280 and I believe around $16 left in her account. So, and then let's see. All right, hold on. Oh, yeah. So another whole thing about this $4,000 is that there's some sort of rumor that Fred didn't have any money to pay for a house that he owned, and that it was going into a foreclosure. Again, that's not true. The house in Weymouth was actually not Fred's house. It was his late grandfather's home, and it was in foreclosure because the estate taxes had never been settled. Between all of the aunts and uncles, I believe there was 8 of them. Fred was one of 8. And because of the unpaid taxes, that's why it was being foreclosed on. So it wasn't Fred's home. So, I mean, simple as that. So, do you have more? Do you? Oh, do we know of anybody that saw Maura's dorm room after she moved in? I don't, but we reach out. I'm assuming that the question about that is did it give an indication that she had like unpacked and then packed, is I think what you're getting at. And one of the other questions I address the packing or unpacking of the dorm room a little bit more, so we'll jump to that. I just read more. I just read that Maura's friend's car, after telling friends of the party she had to return to Fred. Maura had told friends that she had to return Fred's car at the party, and she had to return it. Did she really say that? I believe that she did say that. And it said, if Maura had to return the car in the middle of the night, what is her friend's explanation for why it was necessary? To my knowledge, right now, they haven't given a reason of why she said that she had to return it. And then if Maura really did have to return it to Fred in the middle of the night, what reason did she give for Fred wanting his car back that night? Basically, Fred never asked her to bring the car back that night. He did not know that she was bringing the car back that night. There is some speculation. Erin, the fact that she went to UMass, like one of the things that she said is that she knows that Maura used to use the gym a lot, and that the gym at the hotel was actually nicer than the one on campus. The one on campus was not great. So she thought, well, maybe she just decided to drive back to Fred and stay there and then use the gym at the hotel in the morning. So, but we don't know. And Fred did not ask her to return the car that night. So, all right, hold on. All right. This one, I think, just about made everybody's head explode last night. Was a backpack ever found that was determined to be Maura's? Hold that thought. Sponsored by Mountain Dew. All right. No, there's no backpack that was ever found. There are several backpacks over the years that have been found in different places. And none of the backpacks have ever been determined to be Maura's. Julie did call Fred today directly and asked him if any of these backpacks were, in fact, he thought were Maura's. And he said no. None of these backpacks have ever been determined to be Maura's. Nothing that's been missing phone, clothing, jewelry, wallet, backpack, the alcohol. Nothing has ever been found. So, and it's literally that simple. So, I think rumors or misunderstanding maybe got out of control, but from Julie and from Fred, they're telling me no backpack has ever been found that's Maura's. So, in episode 29 of Maura Murray, Rick Graves mentions that a psychic that spoke with the family mentioned the word mojo. Was the Mojo Cafe in Franconia, New Hampshire, ever looked into as a consideration to the mojo word from the psychics? As far as I know, Julie didn't know. As far as I know, I've not heard anybody ever look into that. Out of the many different groups that are out there on Facebook, the Rooms group actually talks a lot about psychics. And Sarah is very active in that group as well. And so I would think that this would also possibly be a good topic of conversation for that group as well. So what are your feelings about the girls who had the party at Amherst the night Maura totaled Fred's new car, and why haven't they said much at all? And if I remember correctly, never helped with searches, etc. This always seemed really fishy to me, and for being such close friends of Maura. They actually haven't been quiet. They have talked to law enforcement and they have talked to other people. But part of it is when you look for a motive, I mean, Kate came forward and talked to Renner, and Renner slandered her father all over the place. So that doesn't help us when we're trying to open lines of communication back up because people are afraid. I have had multiple people who know that the family wants to talk to them that have said that they do not want to talk because they are afraid that whatever they say is going to get misconstrued, or that they are themselves going to become a target when they simply were just a witness or an acquaintance of Maura. So stuff like that does damage. You know, when you put a bunch of stuff out there about people that is not verified and not true, and has no relevance to Maura going missing, it hurts and it does damage for everybody in this community. So that's a fact. So did all of the neighbors in the immediate vicinity get interviewed about what they may have known, seen, or after the fact? Did they ever come after the fact? So I was told, like, Fred, when he showed up on Wednesday, like, he was the search party. There was not this big mobilized thing. I believe that around the 10-day mark, people went out and started knocking doors in the area, like relatives started knocking doors and saying, have you seen anything? And this was the first time that I know of that anybody went and knocked on doors to even find out whether or not, they knew about Maura going missing. So I'd like to ask the question, have Fred and Julie inquired about Bruce McKay's whereabouts the night to Chuck West? Specifically, why was he missing in action for more than 2 hours immediately following the time of Maura's crash? And then if they have, what is Chuck's reply? I don't know. I believe that probably Julie has talked to Chuck about it. That's between her and Chuck. However, I was with Aaron and I did talk to Chuck about McKay. The impression that I get from Chuck is he does not consider McKay high on his list. But he does reiterate that if he felt he was involved, that he would go out and they would prosecute or they would go after. He's basically saying that law enforcement's not getting a pass. But it doesn't seem to me like it's been taken very seriously so far. So, however, more information comes forward, and sometimes public pressure helps get law enforcement to react. It's a delicate balance. We don't want to totally upset law enforcement, but at the same time, sometimes the only way to get things done is public pressure. So in any case, if that answers that. Was Swiftwater Stage Stop ever searched? I don't know if it was ever searched. I did talk to Winnie. She said she never saw Maura there. She never mentioned anything about a search. Obviously, that's the only gas station that's close to where Maura had her accident. So there's lots of people that have been in and out of that area. So, but I don't know if it's officially ever been searched. Is it possible that the Murray family could post a timeline 6 to 9 months prior to her disappearance of their own activities, and if there was anything off? I talked to Julie a little bit about this. They were so focused on Maura going missing. They have a general idea of where they were prior to Maura going missing, but they don't specifically remember, I was here, I did this, I did that. There's kind of bits and pieces of what they remember. So I doubt that they would be able to put a timeline together of exactly where they were leading up to Maura going missing, just because so much time has gone by, and that just wasn't their focus. So they were worried about Maura going missing at the time, not thinking about their own whereabouts and the time leading up to her going missing. So Fred had mentioned her car was in bad shape and had to be towed to UMass. Why did she drive it up north? I apologize. We just crossed. This is just a second question. We already did that. The car wasn't towed. Fred drove it back to UMass. Maura followed Fred. So has anybody spoken to the Domino's employees from back then? I don't know who they are. If you know who they are, I would be more than glad to talk to them. We would love to talk to anybody that we think might have some information. What happened to the carpet samples taken from the A-frame? Have they disappeared? I know that Healy had the carpet samples for a really long time before they got turned over to law enforcement. Law enforcement has, at least publicly that I know of, has never said if the samples have been tested and what the results are. However, we also know that there were samples taken during the oxygen series, and I think it is possible that we could get those samples and maybe do some testing with those. So that's a good question, something that we can maybe follow up on. So does Bill truly believe that the phone call he received while en route, Red Cross calling card with Maura softly sobbing, is that actually Maura? Does he believe that phone call was actually Maura's? So I think it probably makes sense. His exact words, what he responded to me with was, I thought it was her until the New Hampshire State Police convinced me otherwise. After realizing how much the police got wrong and how many mistakes they have made, I don't know whether it was her or not. I think that says it all. So, Julie commented on the podcast while at CrimeCon that Maura packed up her room. Is there any insight that you can give into the statement and why she feels that way? Was there a determining factors that led her to that conclusion? I asked her that today. She actually said, did I say that? She says, if I said that, I made a mistake. Let me correct. She does not believe that Maura packed up her room. There is actually an item of clothing that it was a jacket that Julie had given Maura as a Christmas present that Maura had just taken to UMass for that season. And you can actually see that jacket is unpacked and it's hanging up in the dorm room photos. So Julie just doesn't feel like she packed up her dorm room. That's her feeling on it. So can you tell us anything about the official investigation? Are they actively investigating or possibly responding to tips that come in, or something else? I actually don't know if they are actively investigating. I'd like to hope that they're actively investigating, but again, law enforcement up there keeps things very close to the vest. I don't. I would hope that they are actively looking for leads and going out there and not just reacting to what's being found. I hope that there's both of those things are going on, but there is better communication now. Julie has spent more time talking to law enforcement, which I think is great. But they still keep things very close to the vest. So we really don't know. It says Maggie has reassured us at least 3 times that there that their task force are real. Can you tell us the status of these task force, who's on them, what they are covering, and how many are operating? I always thought that this was interesting because the cold case unit I was always under the impression it's very small. And then not long ago, I was in one of the groups and we were having a conversation, and I was like, we ended up looking up to see who's actually on the cold case unit. There's just not a lot of people. Like, I think that Chuck and there's another gentleman, I think that they are part-time. I think that there's an attorney, there's a full-time investigator, and there's a victim's advocate. And I may be missing one person, but I think that is the entire cold case unit for all of New Hampshire. So, you have, and they have 100+ missing person cases that they're dealing with. So, the fact that they say that there's like this task force that's been established kind of gave me the impression when I first heard it is, oh, this is wonderful. We've got 10 guys over here working and 3 guys over here. And the reality is that that's not the case. There's definitely not that many people available to them. So I don't know what the task force is. We've never been told what their roles are. We've never been told what they're doing. So I don't know, I'm not sure if that was for television or what, but I don't know. So law enforcement we certainly don't get the impression that when we talk to them that there's this gigantic task force. So, but anyway. We've heard from a few different sources that law enforcement knows what happened, but like the evidence, but they lack the evidence to go to trial. Do you think that this is true, or do you think, that they are just being frank when they said that all options are on the table? If they do have a lot of evidence to suggest that one person did it, we have no idea who that one person is. Obviously, in the beginning, I think that we know from just publicly that Rick Forcier was looked at a lot. But again, we get no impression of who their main suspect is. I do find it disconcerting. Strelsland said that there was a 75%, there's 75%. And I think that in all of the years that I've been involved and everybody else, I don't think any of us feel 75% about any one person. So either that means that law enforcement knows a lot more than we do, or, they were making that up because they were in front of a judge. So I don't know. Maggie responded to the same question by saying that I think that they have a theory based on evidence. Don't believe there's any concrete. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I kind of already answered that. Can you tell us about the family's efforts? Do people have specific roles? What's your role? Can you comment on any specific focus of the family's efforts? And any current good leads. So I would say that I don't think that the family ever sat down and said, this is your role and this is your role and this is your role. I think people just kind of have fallen into things. I think that one thing is that Fred, in my opinion, is kind of the big picture guy. He's looking for the next lead. He's looking for what happened on a big picture level. my impression of Julie is that she is very, very, very detail oriented. And so the details that maybe Fred might look over because it's not within his wheelhouse, Julie kind of picks up on that and makes sure that, that it gets documented. So, and then I think that, the rest of the family is still very invested and involved, but they're just not necessarily in the public light. I mean, Kurt is also in the public light, obviously. I mean, he's there at the 15-year anniversary. He's there at the house dig. He's on camera. So he has his role as well. But I think that the whole family is still very involved, and they talk and they follow everything. But some people are more in front of the camera and some people aren't. As far as what my role is, I touched on that a little bit earlier. I mean, I've taken a different approach in the last 6 months. And that approach is I wanted to see if I could be more effective by being a little bit more public about who I am. So far, I think it's working. I think it's helping. I mean, at least now I feel like communication has gotten better between all of the groups. And I feel like I have a better understanding if there's leads that happen. I kind of understand the path that the lead goes. And I don't need the lead to come to me. If it comes to me, that's fine. I'll make sure it gets to the right place. But if it doesn't come to me, as long as it eventually gets to the family, that's what the goal is. So I think my role is just, I've always wanted to know what happened, and I'm an advocate for the family, and I just want to help in whatever way I can. And doing this, what I'm doing tonight, is part of that. So, anyway, I hope that answers that question. Is there any progress as far as law enforcement sharing information with the family? I'm referring to Fred's previous legal efforts and attempts to get information contained for family members to see the files and or camera footage, something to that effect. There is more communication between law enforcement now and Julie. And I think that that's great. There is no current legal effort to go after the state like Fred did 2 years ago. But all options are on the table at all times. So if we feel like we're not getting the answers that we need, I would not take that as an option off the table. The other thing is that there's a lot of FOIA requests. Aaron has done an amazing job of filing FOIA requests and getting things released that should be released. And my opinion is that there are things that law enforcement has that probably should be released to the general public. So, hopefully they willingly release more things to the public. And also, hopefully, they are more responsive to 91As and we get more stuff released. So I think we're almost to the end here. What are the areas where you think the community should put more emphasis? Are there theories or topics that you think a result or net worth are worth pursuing? Are not worth pursuing? And what are key issues or questions that, if resolved, could move things forward? What role with the family team hope for the community to play moving forward? So I think that as far as the community emphasis, I like to use the house as a perfect example. The family had a credible tip. They were not getting a reaction the way that they wanted with law enforcement. So they used the Maura Murray community and they used the public to ask, why is this credible tip not being followed up on? And ultimately it got followed up on. That can be adversarial at times, but sometimes that's what needs to happen. We would prefer that not happen, and that when there's a tip, it just happens. But sometimes you just have to go out and be more aggressive. So, as far as as that relates to the community, if the community continues to like support, Maura and her family, then those opportunities are going to come up. So there's going to be another tip that comes down the road where we're going to need the support of the community to put public pressure on law enforcement to get a reaction. So, and then outside of, that, there's so many people. I mean, like look at like Nancy Corey, now, 3 years now. I might have gotten that wrong. I'm sure she'll let me know if I did, but she's done the boots on the ground, all of the volunteers that she's had, all the locals. I mean, you look at like, John Smith, he's been involved since the beginning. He has his mission, that I've talked to, I've been there when Fred's like, this is your mission. And, so everybody has a role to play. And the goal is to keep building this bigger and to create a sense of unity. I mean, I feel like at CrimeCon, that was one of my goals, is to kind of force everybody together. And really my one main goal was to get a photograph of Maggie and Aaron Larkin standing next to each other. And I got it. So my trip was fine. That's the only thing I wanted when I was there. So I made that happen. But I mean, a perfect example is look at CrimeCon panel 2 years ago and then look at the CrimeCon panel this year. And I mean, I'll let you make your own decisions, but I think the level of professionalism that we brought to this year's panel, was just a whole nother step of where we need to be going. And so I just want to keep ratcheting it up and making it more professional, growing it bigger, and then finding Maura. So that's my goal. So, all right. So that is the end of all written questions that I have right now. Let me look really quick. Jesus, hour and 40 minutes. Guys are wearing me out. Oh man, let's look at everything we got here. Let me check in one other spot, guys. I apologize. Give me a second here. All right. Give me a second. See if okay, I got them. Let's see. All right, so I don't have anything too huge that I'm seeing, but I also apologize if I missed anything. So if you guys want to reach out to me later and give me a private message or ask it publicly, either way, I can try to go in and answer any of those questions. And the other thing that I really wanted to express to everybody for Julie is Julie is immensely thankful for everything that everybody has done for her and her family. And I think that it's amazing that there's so many people that have gone out of their way and spending their own money and their own time to try to help Maura's family. So I don't think that she can really put into words how she feels and how Fred feels about the community that support them in finding Maura. So I know that from the bottom of their hearts, they thank everybody that's out there. So in any case, if I know that we've gone pretty long, and I'll try to answer anybody's questions offline later. So in any case, thank you everybody for joining in. And if there's anything that you guys can think of that'll help, reach out to me, reach out to the family, and let us know. So thank you guys. I appreciate everything that you guys have done.